Greetings, friends and followers. This is Nurses Talking. I am Dale Barzy. As always, if you like what you see and hear, subscribe, leave us a comment, and let us know what you think. Here on Nurses Talking, we speak to nurses anywhere in the world and at any stage in their nursing journey. Today, I am very, very pleased to welcome Dr. Rayne Soriano from Honolulu, Hawaii. Rayne is a 27-year career Kaiser Permanente employee, and his dedication to nurses, he says, education and practice. Um, as the regional director of professional excellence at the Caring Science Academy and KP Scholars Academy, he leads initiatives in professional practice, academic progression, research, evidence-based programs, and education. Rayne holds a BSN from the University of San Francisco, an MS in nursing education from Sacramento State University, a PhD in nursing science and healthcare leadership from UC Davis. He mentors graduate students, speaks at conferences, publishes, and is a devoted husband and father of three, which is big deal. Yes, Rayne. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, Dale, thank you so much for having me. And what a joy and a celebration now that the holidays are here again. I'm glad we were able to connect finally.
Finally, indeed, indeed. So tell me, Rayne, why are you a nurse?
You know, it's interesting growing up. I'm the eldest of five boys, Dale. And so, I think inherently when you're the eldest of that many brothers or siblings, you're caring for people, before you even know you needed to. And so
Yes.
between, the Heimlich maneuver,
Yeah.
rescuing, your younger siblings from different situations, of course, as you grow up being there as a brother, through thick and thin, through, challenges in life, professionally, personally, things like that. I think everything that nurses do, and are known for, teaching, educating, mentorship,
Yeah.
and just ultimately at the end of the day, caring. It was a passion before I knew it was a passion. And one day, my mom and I were talking, and she says, Rain, if I hadn't if I didn't need to raise five boys and I actually could pursue a career, I would have been a nurse. And I think, and this was, early in my high school career where
Mm,
she said that, and that planted a seed in me, Dale, that as I pursued careers, I really, and when you pursue a career, hopefully it's something that you're passionate about, something you see yourself
hmm.
doing for a long time and that you enjoy and love. And so I think ever since my mom said, she would want to be a nurse, it really planted a seed and made me explore that path. And of course, I have relatives who are nurses and who enjoy their work and are always talking about their passions and the different things they get to do. And so I think, between growing up and already caring for family and my younger siblings, and then my mom finally planting that seed,
Hmm. Hmm.
made me pursue the field of nursing, and I've been blessed and honored ever since, Dale.
It was, I know. I can identify. You talked about younger siblings. I have younger siblings too, so I get what you're saying.
And believe it or not, out of the five of us, I'm the only one who went into nursing and into the field because of my brothers. They couldn't stand the sight of blood, and B, and B, they were more technical, and so they went into engineering and computer science. And so, it's nice to stand out.
So it is. So it is. But Rain, so you have been 27 years, which tells me that when you got into nursing, probably there weren't that many men in the field.
Mhm.
So how did that challenge you?
Yeah, it actually, was interesting. I was just reflecting upon that because I saw an old classmate of mine and a great friend, and he and I were talking about that growth in men in nursing. In fact, now there are associations, built
Yeah.
around men in nursing, as you know, Dale. And so, things that we would have not ever, seen or expected, back then. And so in my class, we had, I believe, six men, out of, a few hundred
Mhm.
students in my bachelor's of nursing program. And so, honestly, it wasn't a challenge at all, just because, you realize that you're coming into a field that's, mostly women. Luckily though, at the time, since I did go to school in San Francisco, diversity was such a joy
Mhm.
and a blessing to be in such a diverse a program and class. In fact, my alma mater, USF, just received one of the higher rankings in diversity and
Yeah.
inclusion among nursing schools across the U.S. And then of course serving our communities in the Bay Area, whether it's San Francisco, East Oakland,
Yeah.
anywhere in our Bay Area communities where you're not only working with diverse communities and populations, but really getting to learn people's journeys through health and what challenges they face. I think for me, in terms of being a male in the nursing field at the time, growing, the most challenging part, honestly, was in my maternity rotation, Dale, because again, culturally, depending on what part of the city you were in, husbands did not want, male nurses to be in the birth of their children,
Yeah.
especially because they're firstborn. And so I spent probably a whole semester of my maternal child rotation in the circumcision area, learning from a wonderful preceptor. So needless to say, it was very traumatizing, and but I learned a lot. And so I think that was the biggest challenge when it came to being a being a man in the nursing profession, to be
I
honest, Dale.
get that. I get that.
I mean, I still learned a lot, and in fact,
Mhm.
I have the highest admiration for our, colleagues that work in obstetrics and maternity, and especially in neonatal intensive care
Yeah.
units,
Yeah.
pediatrics and pediatric oncology. I mean, so many challenging areas that you're not only working with the patient in those care settings, as you know, but it's how to really manage that family
The whole
dynamic, especially with
Mhm.
parents or caregivers who are so
Yeah.
stressed already.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. But you have worked in quite a few specialties. What grabbed your heart?
honestly, when I started out my career in nursing, Dale, I was in the emergency department just because I feel like, just like we talked about, pursuing your passions when you seek a
Hmm.
career.
Hmm.
When you're in nursing, pursuing a specialty, and for those I mentor and students I talk to, that often ask, how do you know what specialty you should get into? And oftentimes, it's a style of the way you work, the way you think, the speed at which you like the pace of your environments. And
Yeah.
so,
Hmm.
for me, the emergency department was wonderful because I loved not knowing what was coming in the door, from minute to minute. I
Yeah.
loved being able to think quickly and prioritize, work in an intense environment where you had to slow down to go fast and be safe.
Hmm.
And really learned from a lot of mentors, physician, colleagues, a lot of our staff, in radiology and the lab, surgery. And so you really got to see the connections in a rapid way. And I think, from then on, when we started to implement our electronic health records, oftentimes when, people want to find crazy people who want to attempt these things, they often come to the emergency department, Dale. And so I guess I happened to be at the right place at the right time and seemed to know what I was doing with, clinically. And, at the
Yeah.
time, I was an educator in the emergency department and love to teach and use technology to do it. And this was before we knew the power of these electronic and digital health systems today. At the time, naively, we thought, oh, it's just going from, paper to,
From
to
paper to yeah.
right, or word processor. Oh boy, were we wrong. And so, to be chosen to co-lead that effort, in 21 hospitals, Dale, learned very quickly that, that effort shined the light on all the connections, all the
Mm-hmm.
things that we needed to, be in sync with, as professionals and as clinicians in all settings, not just in the hospital, but outside of the hospital where we
Yeah.
discharge patients to, as you know. And so, and what the power of information, which we now call, informatics, which is where
Yeah.
I still teach and mentor quite a bit of students. And so as you start to look at the role of nurses, outside of the hospital walls, it's inspiring to see nurses who are in Microsoft. We have chief nurses in
Yeah.
Google, in the technology industry, leading a lot of these innovative efforts to create tools and solutions that continue to serve patients, in their lives and in our communities. And so it's an inspiring and wonderful time. And so, from informatics, I came full circle back to the emergency department and started to work, with our social workers and with our case managers on trying to solve a lot of the challenges we were having with,
Mm-hmm.
discharging, for example, homeless patients or houseless
Yeah.
patients back into the community. Of course, mental health challenges, behavioral health challenges. With a growing elderly population, we were challenged with, patients who needed conservatorship or they were, suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, with caregiver fatigue being such a reality in our society and in many,
Yeah.
societies, how do you provide respite care while continuing to assure the safety of our patients while they go back home or,
Yeah.
in their
Mm-hmm.
placement? Yeah. And then, of course, the plight of our social workers who, you were dealing with mental health,
Mm-hmm.
social,
Social
economic,
issues.
all of
Mm-hmm.
the barriers, as you know, to achieving, proper care. And when you're choosing between medications and groceries, guess what? Maslow's hierarchy often wins
There you
in those
go. Mm-hmm.
situations, right? And so,
Mm-hmm.
being able to use the power of informatics and information to apply to those situations to find resources in the communities. And because education was my passion, I ended up back in what we now call the Scholars Academy, where,
Mm-hmm.
sending our nurses back to school, whether it's professional degrees, getting connected to their professional organizations and getting certified, and doing a lot of the work now that we saw as magnet work, but now it's,
Mm-hmm.
formally supporting the magnet journey. And of course, the pandemic hits, Dale, and at that time there was no more bucket list, right? And so that's how the
That's it.
Hawaii adventure came out. And luckily, we have a Kaiser in Hawaii, and so I said,
Mm-hmm.
wow, I'm sure the kids are still young, if we're not going to try something like this, anytime soon, maybe with the pandemic and not knowing the
Mm-hmm.
uh, outcome of that event. And so we moved to Hawaii where, I was blessed to be able to work with our teams here on COVID, support and relief for our caregivers and our
Yeah.
patients. But then also got to, co-lead the disaster efforts in our fires in Maui and be at the front
Mm.
there and talk about a disastrous situation where now you're helping people who have lost everything, and who for many had didn't have a lot to begin with. And so again, working with, FEMA, with the Red Cross, with the different healthcare organizations, in such an isolated place for such a traumatic event, and the ripple effects, just like with COVID, continue to today. And so again, back to what we were talking about before, we started the call. The universe puts us where we're meant to be, and I'm a strong
Yeah.
believer in that, Dale. And
Yeah.
so
Mm-hmm.
as a nurse, we're so blessed in that wherever we are, we provide such
And
value
self.
in the impact that we provide because of the care that we provide and the way we do things. And I
Yeah.
think, the things I learned back in the emergency department were, as the chaos and the environment and as things continue to change, oftentimes you're counted upon to be that the calm, in the
Yeah.
eye of the
Mm-hmm.
storm, right? To be that
Yep.
conductor, the calm down. And so that's my work today with caring science and a lot of the programs we're doing for resiliency and rebuilding resiliency
Yeah.
among our caregivers. And, whether you're a new grad, starting out in nursing or a leader in our field, everyone needs help. Everyone needs support because we're all traumatized, as we were talking about, earlier, still from the pandemic and other
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. So here's a question I have for you now. You are in informatics, and we just talked a little bit about all of the technology that we're
Yes.
using. As I look back, Rain, um, 10, 15 years, as you talked about, we thought we were naively thinking that we were just going from paper, you know, to the computer. What do you see when you look ahead 10 years from now?
Yeah, and 10 years from now sounds like a long time from now, but I still remember creating 10-year strategies and 10-year,
Mhm,
look at the Future of Nursing report, the IOM reports, right?
mhm.
There's a new one now because it's the next 10 years. And so, as you know, Dale, the hot topics out there when it comes to nursing and in healthcare in general, when it comes to technologies, like things like artificial intelligence, right? And in starting to use and integrate AI in many of our redundant tasks, whether
Mhm.
you're writing emails or, doing things that are repetitive, you see, just like with any technology, that the human factor is always needed because whatever the system spits out, to blindly trust that it's accurate, it's evidence informed or evidence based,
Yeah,
and it fits, the situation or your patient's condition or needs, that's naive and often very dangerous. And so,
yeah.
I think, when people have this fear that AI will replace, nurses or caregivers or our colleagues, that's so far from the truth because I don't know if AI can hold someone's hand during the birth of their child or the end of their life, to
Right.
preserve the dignity at the end of life. I don't know if AI can ever do that. And B, the safety based on the situation of our patients, it's not a one size fits all, as you know, Dale. And so
Right.
to expect a system to, comprehend what someone's going through, their journeys, their lived experiences, their culture, their beliefs, in order to provide a plan of care that fits their needs and that, achieves the best outcomes. It's so far from, beyond, what I can even fathom. I mean, to think that anything can replace the human brain, much less the human heart, it's going to be a while. And so, although we're getting hit with technologies left and right, there's a lot of promise from technology.
Yes.
But the next time I have to memorize yet another password, Dale, I'm gonna throw my computer out the window.
I
Because you know
know.
what I mean? It's like you watch our nurses, scanning and retinal and
Yeah.
fingerprints, and it's like we did a time and motion study with Dr. Marilyn Chow and our teams a few years ago and found that almost 60% of time was spent, in automating tasks. So whether it's documentation or trying
Hmm.
to tend to technologies. And when you talk about the need to be at the bedside and the need to be present with patients, when technology becomes a distractor, rather than a support for our caregivers,
Right.
nurses, it's designed wrong, obviously. And that's why nurses are needed at the design table and to work in
Yeah.
technology companies alongside our engineers and computer experts because unless you know what patient outcomes need to happen, it's hard to create products or solutions that achieve that. And oftentimes, as you know, it's don't create something for me without me.
There you go.
It's like, it's tough to create a solution and hit the target in terms of that outcome of care when you've never walked in the shoes of the caregiver or the patient that you're
Or the
serving.
patient.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That right there is huge because a
Mhm.
lot of that is what has been happening traditionally.
Yes.
That stuff has been created without the core people involved.
Right. That's right. And you see a lot of these smart homes and a lot of these solutions that are now, enabled by voice command, right?
Hmm.
How many years ago did we say when you see someone talking to themselves in public, they must be crazy? And now we're like, hey Siri, hey Alexa, everyone's talking to themselves and that's the norm, and it's the
Yes.
world has changed in the last 10 years. And so when you think about the next 10 years, there's this, I think, need to come back to reality, to basics when it comes to connecting to our purpose, connecting to each other now that we've seen what it's like to be remote and not be with each other. And so just reconnecting, with people and regaining the
Yeah.
humanity of what we do.
Yeah. But that reconnecting I've been noticing is very, very difficult for some people.
Mhm.
Um, Especially if you started out, I suppose, if you started out being a little bit of an introvert. But you went out anyway because you had to go to work and you had to go to the store and you had to do this. So you went out and you interacted. But then, the pandemic came along and everybody was at home. And although this was probably not your own cocoon, you didn't have to go anywhere to do anything. And now you can venture out, but you don't have the impetus. You don't have what it takes to make that first step. I've seen that happening a little bit, or maybe more than a little bit actually, with some people, which that's a shame.
That it is, Dale. And I think that's where the trying to find that sweet spot, that balancing point of what you can do remotely or virtually
Yeah,
versus what you need to do in person. Because
yeah.
again, just like we were talking about AI or, robots or anything digital replacing the human connection, it's hard to have a human connection really, when you're not around
With a
other
lot of
humans,
people.
And so the beauty and the things we've learned from the pandemic is maybe you don't need 2-hour meetings. Maybe you can do a 30-minute meeting and then go out and spend time with people and
Yeah,
volunteer and
yeah,
rekindle those passions that you once had before the pandemic and share
yeah.
it with others. Because I think when we talk about the challenge of mental health, what colleagues have found and what I've found is it's hard to be burnt out when you're so busy, and passionate and doing what you love with people you love, doing things
Hmm.
with,
Hmm.
and so so how do you find those opportunities? And so we're investing a lot in communities of practice, where you're seeing now, even in our communities, running clubs and fitness clubs, people finding not
Yes.
expensive things, but
Yeah.
shared hobbies
Yeah.
to really connect with people outside and to
Yeah.
be able to get out and have a reason and a purpose to get out again. One of the things that we found also is that this super commuter culture where, especially in, places like California where people are
Mhm.
driving,
Yeah.
hours and hours a day just to get to work and back. No wonder that you're so burnt out and
Yeah.
stressed out even before you
Yeah.
get to work, much less hoping you have enough mental fortitude and energy to get home every day.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it's that balance of what can I do at home that's reasonable and effective and and doesn't have to be, hours at a time in front of a computer and
Yeah.
how can I still connect with people, Dale? And so I think those solutions are out there and they're growing and yeah, and they're helping a lot of people for sure.
Yeah. 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 And thankfully so. Thankfully so. So I wanted to ask you about something else. You are a certified heart math instructor.
Mhm.
So tell us a little bit about heart math.
Well, the beauty about Heart Math, is, we've been doing it as an organization for over 10 years as one of our micro practices of caring science in terms of
Mm-hmm.
heart science. And what as we know, the heart generates signals to the brain twice as fast as the brain does to the heart. And so when we talk about that gut feeling or that instinct that we have as
Mm-hmm.
nurses, or even as parents, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes my mom tells me, Rayne, I know when you're having a bad day before you even say anything, and we could be miles away
Nice.
or in different,
Mm-hmm.
continents. And, mothers have almost that virtual umbilical connection with
Yeah.
their kids. You can
Yeah.
tell, you can sense that, right? And so heart math very much is that very sense of, listening to your heart. It's generating, regenerative feelings and gratitude and speaking with your heart. And how do you go into situations that are so traumatic? Like, a lot of firefighters, police officers use heart math before they go into the scene
Yeah.
or into the field just to calm down and to slow your heart rate and to be able to think clearly. And so, as providers of care, whether you're in the hospital or in other settings where you're entering a sacred space where you know that there's trauma or there's a need to be served, and you have to, it's that, how do you put your oxygen mask on first before you put it on others? And so I think heart
Mm-hmm.
math is such a wonderful micro practice, and the techniques around heart math have helped our caregivers, our leaders, our students in again approaching situations that might induce stress or anxiety and be more resilient, and to go into a situation with a clear mind and a clear heart, and then come out of there with gratitude that we were blessed to be able to serve someone in that
Yeah,
situation.
yeah. And you described it so very well for me. Because as the word that stuck with me as you spoke is that it is a micro practice.
Mm.
And it isn't something that we have to get all twisted out of shape about.
Not at all.
But the benefits are huge.
It is,
The
Dale.
benefits are
It only
huge.
takes a few seconds to a couple minutes, It's we know it as different things, people do it, through meditation or, as you're
Yeah,
driving, you're, reflecting or debriefing in your
yeah,
mind. And again, how
yeah.
do you approach a situation? I mean, just like a parent, instead of reacting, first based on the news you've just heard, you go in there and you breathe and
Mm.
you form a feeling of gratitude before find out what exactly happened.
What happened? Yes, yes.
So it helps in
I
many
can do this.
situations.
I've got this. But I asked you to speak a little bit about it because I really do think that sometimes we need to be reminded that really we can ground ourselves without, getting into a big fluster about it. It's
That's
not
right.
hard. It's not
That's
hard. We
right.
just have to be intentional.
That's right. And it's so evidence-based, Dale, and it's scientific in terms of the physiological, and scientific components of heart
Yes.
math that, it's oftentimes, with between heart math and caring science and a lot of the things we were working on now, we used to call that the soft stuff, right? Oh, that's the soft stuff, not the hard science or the important things. But it took a pandemic for us to realize that it's actually the most important things to be able to
Yes.
mentally, emotionally, spiritually be well. Otherwise, we do things like burn out and we're in, toxic work environments and we suffer from things like bullying and, the attrition from the profession or from leadership positions. It's a lot of sadness out there and a lot of healing still needs to happen. And you can't do that with anything that's automated or not genuine or
Or not
authentic. Yeah,
exactly. Exactly. So, Rain, I have a couple more questions. Number
sure.
one, what do you do particularly to care for you?
Between, you mentioned introversion earlier, and I think, although I'm usually seen as an extrovert, I'm very introverted, as well as I come to find. I enjoy, moments alone, just being able to meditate, practice heart math, and just reflect on, life. I turned 50 in January, Dale, and so, if I'm blessed, that's halfway through my expiration date, on this earth. And so, I think I've just learned to, spend more time with the people you love and care about. Try to stay away from too much negativity or drama, as much as
Yeah,
possible. So that's a big part of it. But being here in Hawaii, I love paddling. So I do outrigger canoeing. So I'm out in the ocean whenever I get a chance, and just being out in the ocean, you see how small we are in the grand scheme of things and in the world. And I'm always out there praying, thanking, God and everyone for the opportunity to make a difference and to, wake up every day. And
yeah,
and just spending time with friends and loved ones and finding out how they're doing and listening and learning about their journeys and stories. And those are
yeah.
the things I enjoy the most, to be honest, Dale, because, look how fast time is flying. And, one of the things I watched recently, Simon Sinek, and Trevor Noah did a podcast, and they said, we have these industries that want you to are built so that you become better leaders and better, teachers and better clinicians and better, professionals. But there's nothing really out there that teaches you how to be a better friend, and so when I watched that, I said, that's so true. And so, how do I, take the time instead of sacrificing time with people I love and saying, oh, I have to work or I'm too busy.
Mm-hmm.
How do you flip it around and tell work, I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
can't stay over because it's a
Yeah.
friend's birthday or it's
Yeah.
an anniversary or some I haven't seen my friend in a long time. And so trying to reconnect with people I haven't connected with in a long time either, and making and challenging myself to take time to do that. Because we often have so many things, as we talked about earlier, to do that,
Yeah.
we run out of time. And next thing you know,
Yeah.
we're saying
Yeah.
happy holidays and happy new year, and another year has passed.
Yeah, indeed, indeed, indeed. And so, as you said, the time goes by so quickly, and before we know it, pretty much like run out of it.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah. So what advice would you give to someone who wants to be a nurse though?
Oh, wow. Well, first of all, if someone told me they want to be a nurse, I would say thank you, because
Yeah,
say, when people see what's happened to nurses, especially during the pandemic and the environments and the it's a tough job, and not just in the hospital, but in any setting. Oftentimes, I have, such empathy, especially with our school nurses, who, we talk about ratios, right? They're often the only person taking care of hundreds of people,
yeah,
and some with, mental health challenges or with,
yeah.
the challenges of autism and things like that we see in our schools. And you have one nurse, that's out there trying to care
That's
for a
it.
whole population of people, public health nurses out there in the front lines of social, economic, all the challenges that we see that, become barriers to health. And, home health nurses, hospice nurses, so, anyone that's coming into nursing now, I would A, thank them, and B, just, let them know that it's a career that's truly a calling, in that, what's going to keep you going is always staying connected in the fact that you make a difference,
Yeah,
whether it's one person, a community of people, and the opportunity to grow and to be a light in many places is tremendous. And so to continue to, really work on yourself, because you need to be resilient and as we talked about, know how to care for yourself before you care for others. And I think it's a career that teaches you about yourself as
Yes.
well. And,
Yeah,
and so, you're going to meet people from different backgrounds, origins, stories, situations, challenges, and
yeah.
so you're gonna see and learn a lot, in this career we call nursing, and it's been such a joy and a blessing. And the more you put into it, the more it gives back to you, which is what I've learned in almost 28 years in it, Dale. And so, I have nothing but admiration and excitement for anyone that wants to come into the career of nursing, because 2030 is coming around the corner, and we often look at that year as
Hmm.
the year that will have the most
Yeah.
baby boomers and the
Baby.
least amount of nurses, right?
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
we need you, and so if you want to come into nursing, we need you, especially if you're all about caring for others and that's what you're passionate about. That's all you need. We can teach you the rest, and you
The
can learn
rest
the
can be
rest
taught.
as you go.
You you just talked about the more you put into it, the more it gives back to you. And that is so true because what that said to me, what reminded me of, is that almost, you know, every time I thought to myself along the way, every time I thought to myself, I can't do this, I am going to quit. Almost immediately after that, I found myself in a situation where I was grateful that I had the opportunity to be there. I don't know, almost all the time when you think that I've done it, I can't do it anymore. And it shows you that you can and that you're valuable. More importantly, that you're valuable. And so you come back for more.
That's it. And that's why I love, our work now with Caring Science and with Dr. Gene Watson, Dale, because,
Mhm.
her Caritas processes, one, it shows you the human that it's such a human profession.
Yeah,
It's like to be human is to be, a nurse and vice versa. And to be reconnected with the fact that it swings, right? And so, one of the Caritas or caring science processes is forgiveness. You have to be able to forgive, the situation and yourself, and realize there's a good and a bad, and hard times and good times, just like with
yeah,
anything. And
yeah,
how do you work through that? And again, you're going to learn a lot about yourself in terms of being able to pick yourself up and motivate yourself and know that you make a difference. And oftentimes, for me, like I had a student the other day call me and let me know that she was just diagnosed with breast cancer. And, I was having such a hard day that day, just busy anyway, that, again,
mm,
it was just, again, the universe saying, wow, you thought you had a hard day, Rayne.
yeah.
Here's someone whose mortality has just flashed before their eyes. And
Hmm.
again, being a light for someone that comes to you and trusts you enough to be able to express those feelings and being authentic and
Yeah,
present for people, during those times. That's the value of nursing. And that's why I don't think,
exactly.
technology can ever replace, the humanity and the connection that we bring to patients and to our communities, in the settings that we're in.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And very often, I think we don't even realize just how far those ripples go.
That's right. That's
Don't
right, Dale. Well, it's
realize
it's that Teddy Roosevelt saying, right? No one cares how much you know until they know how much you
you
care.
care.
And
Exactly.
and we as nurses, we smell genuineness from a mile away, or the lack thereof.
Indeed we do. Indeed we do. That brought me to a question that I've been asking people because you said we smell genuineness from a mile away. And I've been asking this question. I've been asking people, what do they see? If you could tell me in one word, what do you see? Think of then as the most essential quality of a nurse. What would that word be?
Hmm. I'm not sure if this qualifies a quality, but it's really love. Though
Love.
the word that comes to mind is love. You
Hmm.
have to love love yourself in order to love others, just like we talk about caring. And you have to love caring for other people. I think love is such a powerful word, but as we know, love overcomes so many things, and when you see what happened through the pandemic and the love that people gave to strangers
Hmm.
in all parts of the globe. That's really the strength, I think, of nursing. And as a nurse, we are a symbol of love, we are a symbol of humanity. And so I think, when you talk about qualities of nurses, I think the people I admire the most who are in our field, Dale, they just love, they love who they mentor. They love uh just getting certified so they can be better caregivers and
Hmm.
learn
Hmm.
more. It's that art and the science of nursing. We have people who love research and love the science and the clinical aspects. Yet on the other end, we have the people that love, the caring aspects and the
Yeah.
humanity. And it's that art and science. And so when you trace back, our times to Florence Nightingale, where she showed that balance, amidst the Crimean War and the
Yes,
challenges in those environments. I mean, look at the things we're still talking about today that are challenging
indeed. Mhm.
globally, and the things that the places we're needed as nurses. So I think that's the big thing for me, Dale, in terms of a quality for nurses that they need to have is love.
That's huge. That's huge. And that resonated. That really resonated with me. Because I started to feel that perhaps that's what I've been seeing because I started to ask that question actually, not so much because I wanted to get the words out from people I don't think, but because I started to notice that I could recognize nurses without ever being told that somebody was a nurse. And I kept trying to think, well, what is it I'm seeing? What am I seeing? What is that quality and, trying to put my finger on that quality. And I think you've just done it.
Yeah, well, and that's why I love working with the Daisy Foundation and any foundation or organization that honors the work that nurses and nurse leaders do every day, because it's how do you put those things into words and capture and bottle those moments that,
Exactly.
as we know, every second of the day nurses are working. There are those caring moments and those care
Hmm.
moments of love that take place again at the beginning of life all the way to the end of life. And that's why we're so blessed as a
Hmm.
profession, Dale, because we get to be in those moments, in the most vulnerable moments of people's lives, and they trust us. That's why we're the most trusted profession, and they trust us to be in those
Yeah.
moments to care for them. And
Yeah.
man, if that's not a great career to be in, I don't know what is, Dale.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. It is a privilege. It is a privilege. And I don't know that I didn't come into it knowing that it would be a privilege.
Hmm.
Uh, I came into it because I felt drawn to it, but not really understanding just how privileged and as you say so many times, blessed I would be to be in those special moments along the way in someone's life,
That's right.
in the lives of people that I know and in the lives of people that I will never see again, but just right there at the time to make a difference.
That's right,
Yeah.
Dale. And I think, when we talk about, and I think one of your questions you also sent over was about nursing education, the
Hmm.
future of nursing education. And so,
Yes.
as I mentioned, education is one of my many passions within nursing. And when I see, the future of using things like simulation and virtual reality, just like we have artificial intelligence in education, we have virtual reality or augmented
Yeah.
reality. It's how do you capture human interactions and situations in a virtual, environment that then
Yeah.
for nurses coming into the profession who haven't had jobs or haven't needed to work
Yeah.
or be exposed to society from an employment perspective.
Yeah.
How do you teach them about situations where you're doing service recovery, or you're with a grieving family or an
Yeah.
angry family,
Yeah.
or leaders, how do you simulate situations where you're giving counsel, or you're coaching and counseling and trying to do it in a caring way, or anything like, because healthcare is a business as well. How do you
Yeah.
teach political savviness and working in a labor environment? What are those conversations like, instead of falling into situations where it's trial and error, and you're trying to navigate
Yeah.
your way through real situations that have a
Yeah.
lot of impact. And so so I think the future of education again is tapping into the minds and hearts of those who've come before us to replicate and recreate those situations and really bring it to life. Because when we look at the connection between schools of nursing, especially in the pre-licensure to the
Mhm.
their first job in as that transition to practice, how do you blend the transition so that the focus on nursing schools isn't just on passing that
Ah,
NCLEX, right,
right.
or boards, but really getting you ready to face those situations, in the what we call the real world, depending on
Yeah.
where you're in, because time and time and again, it's still brutal, and that's why we still have that phenomena of eating our young,
Hmm.
nurses eating our
Hmm.
young. We talk about, and
Yeah.
that what we found is that we're pretty cannibalistic and beyond our young. It happens in for new charge nurses, new managers, new educators. I mean, it
Hmm.
can be
Hmm.
pretty brutal. And so, I'm glad we have people like Renee Thompson out there addressing that phenomenon, and has built a lot of her work on, toxic work environments and combating bullying in nursing. And so, we need to pay attention to those things, because
Yeah.
we have to be, again, care for each other as much as we care for ourselves.
Yeah. 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 And not for nothing, but that is something that we traditionally, I think, we've not really been in the habit of doing, is caring for ourselves and each other. We're laser focused on caring for patients and the people we have to serve. But
That's
very
right.
often we forget that we are part of the people we have to serve.
That's right. That's right. And I think keeping that in mind that when we talk about well, the pandemic and the cloud that we're still in, it's because it affected us as humans and as patients as well as it did
Mm-hmm.
as professionals, right? And so I think when it hits you, in both areas, personally and professionally, it makes you reflect and think a lot about, life moving forward and the what ifs and what if, this happens again and how do
Mm-hmm.
I manage disasters and what about my family and what's important to me? Again, what is a bucket list really when you don't get to spend it, or see it,
Oh, see
anyway.
it.
And so
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And you were you just mentioned how do we manage disaster or another pandemic if it comes along. And you reminded me, I remember saying to someone that in every institution that I had worked prior to the pandemic, in every single institution, I could find a manual about a pandemic, what to do if there is a pandemic. But it was always dusty because nobody, we never
Yeah.
bothered to think that it was just a manual. No one ever really thought it was going to happen.
That's right. No, that's right. And it's similar with technology as we,
Hmm.
invest in more and more technology and move away from paper, I mean, I haven't seen an organization without paper yet. But, as we know, between cyber attacks and,
Yeah,
a lot of the things that are, crisis and disasters when it comes to technology, we can never get rid of pen and paper. And in fact,
no.
as we do these drills, these disaster drills, when it comes to outages and technologies, we have, for example, physician
Yeah,
colleagues who are
come.
so new that we hand them a prescription pad and it's like, what do
What
I
do I
do
do with that?
you know and so things to think about when it comes to gosh, do we have a plan B when our systems go down, because as with natural disasters or anything,
Yeah,
especially our colleagues that are working in those areas where hurricanes, tornadoes,
yeah,
earthquakes,
yeah.
or even globally where there are wars and things
All
happening,
kinds of things. All
can't
kinds of
depend
things.
on stability for sure.
Yeah. And we're never that far away from any one of those things
That's right.
because it is now a global society.
That's right.
So if it happens over there, it affects us over here.
No, and,
Yeah.
and, and that's right. And so, and that's another beautiful part about having a community of practice among nurses is we get to share what worked, what didn't work,
Yeah.
how did you do
Yeah.
it? I mean, we used to, like one of the things that stands out during the pandemic is we used to always say, never reuse your personal protective equipment, right? You dispose of your mask and your gowns and all those things. And what did we learn
And then
during
guess
times like
what?
this? It's like, guess what? Maybe that, we need to maybe relook at that,
Yeah.
and so, things to think about and the things we take for granted. We used to give out hand sanitizers left and right like
Yeah.
popcorn, but what ran out, during the
Yeah.
first few weeks of the pandemic, right?
Exactly. 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 Rain, I cannot tell you how much I enjoyed this conversation. I could go on forever. Thank you
We could make it
so,
the
so
longest
very much.
podcast ever, Dale.
Thank you for that. Any last words you'd like to leave me with?
No, Dale, please continue doing what you're doing. What a beautiful way to commemorate, the wonderful work that, our colleagues are doing every day, but to do it in such a joyful and laid back environment where we can laugh, we can think, we can connect dots,
Yeah.
and just thank you for being you and for what you do, my friend. And any opportunity to connect with others or to participate in your world and in your work is such a blessing. And I look forward to the next time we connect again, Dale.
All right. Thank you so much, Rain. Look forward to that too. Take care.
Take care.